You didn't click this because you're curious about vague advice or recycled ideas. Instead, the universe guided you here and you clicked solely because something is shifting inside you and you're trying to understand what it means. That's what a real spiritual awakening feels like. It's not loud, it's not always peaceful. It shows up in ways you don't expect, through your habits, through what no longer feels right, and through what quietly starts mattering more than anything else. If you find yourself doing these 7 very specific things without forcing them, you may already be in your ultimate awakening, and just now realizing it. 1. You begin to lose interest in fixing yourself. At first, it feels like giving up. You stop chasing self-improvement books. You stop obsessing over goals, routines, and the version of you that you thought you were supposed to become. And yet, somehow, you begin feeling more whole than you ever did when you were striving. The shift is subtle but powerful. Instead of trying to fix yourself, you start to actually listen to yourself. This habit is one of the first markers of a deep spiritual awakening. Not because you've given up on growth, but because you've started rejecting the idea that you're broken. The constant impulse to optimize or change who you are begins to quiet. In its place is something more grounded: curiosity, gentleness, and a surprising sense of sufficiency. It's not about self-love slogans. It's not a decision you make. It's a realization that creeps in over time. The inner critic still exists, but it doesn't run the show anymore. You start measuring your days by how connected you feel, not how productive you were. That change in criteria is everything. Without knowing it, your soul is stepping into a deeper layer of awareness, one that understands healing isn't about correction. It's about permission. And once that takes root, nothing feels the same again. 2. You stop needing to explain yourself. Something inside you shifts, and suddenly explaining, defending, or justifying your thoughts starts feeling exhausting. You notice how often conversations revolve around proving, persuading, or being understood, and you quietly step back. Not because you don't care, but because you no longer feel compelled to translate your inner world into terms others can accept. This withdrawal isn't isolation, it's clarity. You begin to recognize that truth doesn't need to be argued. The more you try to explain what you're feeling, the further it slips away. So you stop explaining. And in that silence, something settles, the understanding that not everyone needs to get it. And more importantly, that your peace doesn't depend on whether they do. This habit doesn't come from frustration. It comes from a strange, growing confidence that your experience is valid, even if no one else ever sees it. You become more selective with your energy. You speak less often, but with more honesty. You begin to care more about your own alignment than about external approval. That shift is profound. It marks a departure from the social self, the version of you trained to make everyone else comfortable. And that departure clears the way for the soul to speak more freely, not just inwardly, but in every part of how you live. 3. Your relationship with time starts falling apart. Time begins to feel different. You catch yourself forgetting what day it is. Deadlines feel abstract. The concept of someday loses its weight. You're either completely immersed in what you're doing or deeply resistant to doing it at all. This isn't laziness, it's your internal clock breaking away from the external one. What's happening here is a shift from linear time to what some call presence, but not the Instagram version. This is raw and disorienting. You might feel unmotivated, confused, or detached from things that once structured your identity. But underneath that discomfort is something deeper, your soul resisting the idea that life must be measured and controlled by the clock. You start to value experiences differently, moments that feel real, quiet mornings, honest conversations, a single breath, start meaning more than a packed schedule. You stop chasing time and start noticing it. You stop counting hours and start sensing them. This disorientation is not a malfunction, it's a sign. It means your awareness is breaking through surface layers and touching something more intuitive. Your soul is no longer willing to race against time. It's asking you to slow down long enough to remember that presence isn't a technique, it's your natural state. 4. You can no longer tolerate what isn't true. There are things you used to tolerate, conversations that drained you, roles you played to keep the peace, narratives you repeated even though they didn't feel right. But something changes. You can't keep doing it, not out of defiance, but because your system won't let you. Pretending becomes physically uncomfortable. Silence feels like lying. This shift isn't about becoming confrontational. It's about becoming congruent. You start noticing where your actions no longer match your internal reality, and those gaps start hurting more than they ever did before. The discomfort isn't emotional, it's energetic. It's your soul tugging you toward alignment. You might find yourself walking away from people, jobs, or habits without much warning. Not because you plan to, but because continuing would require a level of self-betrayal you're no longer capable of. It surprises even you. You don't feel powerful, you feel bare. But in that bareness, something honest begins. The deeper your awakening, the harder it becomes to fake anything. This isn't a strategy, it's a side effect of living in truth. And once that begins, there's no going back. Your soul won't allow it. 5. Silence becomes a necessity, not a preference. At some point, noise stops being background. It becomes unbearable. You notice how often people speak just to fill space. You notice how many thoughts are responses to things that don't actually matter. And you feel the pull towards silence, not as escape, but as restoration. This habit doesn't come from burnout. It comes from a recalibration. You begin needing time where no one is talking, no one is performing, and nothing is being consumed. Not even podcasts or music. Just stillness. Not because it's peaceful, but because it's real. In silence, you meet the parts of yourself that don't speak, but know. You might start spending more time alone. You might become more careful with what you let in. You begin to crave quiet the way some crave company. It's not always easy. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. But you know it's necessary. The silence isn't empty. It's full of something your soul has been missing. And the more you return to it, the more you begin to feel like yourself. Your real self. Beneath the stories. Beneath the noise. 6. You start seeing patterns before they happen. It begins subtly. You start feeling a change before it arrives. You sense shifts in people's energy before anything is said. You hear words that aren't spoken but are true anyway. This isn't magic, it's perception. And it sharpens during a true spiritual awakening. Your awareness stretches. You notice how emotions ripple through a room. You feel when someone is about to leave your life, even if nothing is wrong. You recognize when a situation isn't sustainable, even before it cracks. You're no longer just observing life, you're reading it. This habit might feel overwhelming at first. You'll question your sensitivity. You'll doubt your intuition. But over time, you learn to trust what you feel without needing to explain it. You see meaning in patterns, you recognize cycles, and you stop trying to change what you know is already fading. This is your soul's intelligence waking up. It isn't trying to predict the future. It's simply tuned in to what's already in motion. It doesn't need certainty. It just needs space to notice what most people are too distracted to feel. 7. The search ends, but wonder doesn't. You spent years searching for answers, for truth, for something that could make sense of everything you felt. But one day, without any major breakthrough, the searching just stops. Not because you found everything, but because you no longer need to. Instead of looking for meaning, you start noticing it. Everywhere, in ordinary things, in what used to be boring, in what you once ignored. The questions you used to carry with so much weight begin to feel lighter. Not because you've resolved them, but because they've softened. You don't need new philosophies. You need fewer filters. You stop craving certainty and start respecting mystery. You begin to see that the point was never to arrive. The point was to wake up to what's been here all along. This isn't the end of the road. It's the start of being truly present in your life. Your soul isn't asking for another answer. It's asking for your attention. And once you give it, the world doesn't change. But how you feel inside it does. Spiritual awakening isn't something you schedule or seek. It sneaks in when the old ways stop working and something deeper begins asking to be felt. If you've noticed these habits showing up, not as goals but as instincts, you're not just changing. You're waking up, and your soul already knows. If you have made it this far, let us know what you think in the comment section below. For more interesting topics, make sure you watch the recommended video that you see on the screen right now. Thanks for watching.